Extraordinary breaking news, which you just heard there from San Francis. Lucy Connelly, she's the wife of a Conservative councillor. Her appeal against the 31-month sentence for putting out an intemperate tweet in the aftermath of the Southport murders has been dismissed, so she will remain in prison. She's not particularly.
Let's just have a minute to think about this country, right?
Mm.
This is a mother who has now got 284 days to remain away from her child and her husband, and who knows, her parents, maybe her extended family, because she wrote one angry post on social media.
A secret no one saw coming. A name once whispered in elite power circles is now shouted across the nation, and a prime minister in waiting finds himself trapped in a political firestorm of his own making. Just hours ago, Keir Starmer snapped at reporters, breaking his carefully crafted calm after a devastating new revelation in the Connelly case. What followed was a blistering exchange now shaping up to be the political showdown of the year. At the center of this growing storm, Richard Tice, who has just launched an attack so fierce it sent shockwaves through Westminster. But this is no ordinary political feud. This feels darker, something that could shake the very foundations of Britain's institutions. The Connelly Bombshell has detonated, and the fallout is only just beginning. It all started with a file, confidential, buried deep within the Ministry of Justice, marked for limited circulation only. But now, thanks to a whistleblower, its explosive contents are public knowledge. The Connelly case, once a forgotten footnote in legal history, has erupted into a full-blown national scandal. The leaked documents paint a disturbing picture, a deliberate effort to suppress dissent by targeting Sarah Connelly, a low civil servant who, just months ago, wrote a private blog post criticizing the government's stance on free speech and judicial overreach. That post, ignored at the time, has now become the centerpiece of a constitutional crisis. According to the leaks, Connelly was internally flagged as a reputational risk, monitored in secret, and later dismissed from her role under murky circumstances. But the scandal doesn't end there. Weeks after her dismissal, Connelly found herself under investigation, not for espionage, not for leaking state secrets, but for rhetorical harm under expanded hate speech guidelines. She hadn't threatened anyone, she hadn't called for violence. Yet, in a chilling twist, the government argued her blog had the potential to erode public trust in democratic institutions. A phrase so vague it could apply to anyone who dared criticize the state. She was arrested quietly, no headlines, no official statement, just silence us, silence that now feels sinister. That silence shattered when the leaked documents hit the press. The evidence is damning. Keir Starmer's office had been briefed on the Connelly case long before it became public. Not only did he refuse to intervene, but sources now claim he personally approved a strategy to avoid involvement. All while expressing full confidence in the legal process. For weeks, Starmer stayed silent as public outrage grew. His allies insisted it was a matter for the courts, not politicians. But behind closed doors, pressure was building, and today, it finally boiled over. During a tense press briefing outside Labour headquarters, Starmer was directly confronted about his knowledge of the Connelly documents. His reaction was uncharacteristically sharp, some say revealing. "I am sick of these conspiracy theories," he snapped. "There is no political persecution here. There is only law and order, and those who cross the line face the consequences." His voice, normally measured, shook with anger. His jaw tightened, and, without taking further questions, he abruptly walked away. But by then, it was too late. His words had already gone viral. Within minutes, Richard Tice struck back live on national television, and he didn't hold back. "We just witnessed a meltdown," Tice declared. "Keir Starmer knows exactly what's in those documents. He knows Sarah Connelly was targeted. He knows the system is being weaponized to silence anyone who dares speak the truth." Tice accused Starmer of orchestrating a cover-up through silence, dressing up fear and control as justice. Holding up a printed copy of the leaked memo, he read a single line aloud. "The subject's influence may lead to widespread distrust, if not curtailed." The studio went quiet. Tice let the words sink in before looking straight at the camera. This is how tyranny begins. Not with a bang, but with a memo. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Social media erupted with hashtags like #ConnellyFiles, #StarmerCoverup, and #FreeConnelly, flooding Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Protest groups are already organizing demonstrations, and opposition MPs are calling for an urgent parliamentary inquiry. The Connelly case is no longer just a scandal. It's becoming a litmus test for Britain's democracy. #Justice for Truth and #Stop the Silence Dash. Those were the hashtags that ignited a movement. Within hours, thousands were sharing Sarah Connelly's original blog post, stunned that such calm, reasoned criticism could lead to such devastating consequences. Civil liberties groups, once cautious, erupted with fury, releasing statements condemning what they called an abuse of hate speech laws. Calls for a formal inquiry echoed through Parliament, and even opposition MPs demanded full transparency. And yet Starmer stayed silent. Behind the scenes, Labour insiders painted a picture of chaos. Starmer's inner circle was reportedly in panic. Senior aides warned that the Connelly revelations threatened to reopen wounds left by the Lucy Letby scandal, feeding public anger at what many see as a growing pattern of political silence in the face of judicial overreach. Even worse, for Labour, Richard Tice's rapid rise in popularity fueled by Connelly's story was eating into Labour's traditional voter base, working-class supporters, civil rights advocates, and disillusioned centrists. But what really terrified Labour strategists was the narrative taking hold that Starmer was indifferent to ordinary people crushed under authoritarian laws. Connelly had become more than a dismissed civil servant. She was now a symbol, a quiet, intelligent woman punished for asking uncomfortable questions. Just like Lucy Letby before her, she had become the face of a system that many now feared was spiraling out of control. As protests formed outside government buildings, crowds carried signs reading, "Who's next?" and "Truth isn't hate." The Connelly scandal was no longer just a story, it was a movement. Sensing the political tide, Richard Tice seized the moment. He launched the Connelly Standard, a campaign demanding immediate legal reform, a halt to all prosecutions under vague hate speech laws, and the release of all non-violent offenders charged under such provisions. "We're not just fighting for Sarah Connelly," Tice declared in a fiery video statement. "We're fighting for the right to speak freely without fearing a knock on the door." The message struck a chord. Donations to Reform UK surged. Volunteers flooded campaign offices. Regional branches reported record engagement from first-time voters and politically disillusioned citizens. Meanwhile, Labour's press office scrambled to control the narrative. But without a clear statement from Starmer, every attempt failed. His silence was deafening and politically devastating. The Connelly case spread like wildfire, not just across headlines and hashtags, but in the hearts of millions now questioning whether Britain was still the free democracy it claimed to be. What began as a forgotten file had become the defining story of a generation, and then came another revelation. As the public absorbed the shocking leaks, it emerged that Connelly had quietly influenced sensitive government decisions behind the scenes. The political fallout hit with ferocious intensity. Starmer, now under relentless fire from his own MPs and a furious public, tried to stabilize the situation, but every statement he gave only made things worse. Instead of clarity, he offered ambiguity. Instead of transparency, he delivered rehearsed sound bites that sounded more like damage control than accountability. Across social media, trending phrases like #ShadowPuppetMaster and "Who's really in charge" reflected a crumbling public trust. Starmer now stood accused not just of ignoring Connelly's case, but of enabling a covert power network that bypassed democratic scrutiny, and Richard Tice wasted no time. Armed with damning documents and whistleblower testimony, he held a scorching press conference broadcast live across the nation. This was a cover-up, Tice thundered. Sarah Connelly had access to classified briefings. She attended private Labour strategy sessions. She even influenced foreign policy stances. This wasn't just poor judgment, this was a political shadow operation undermining everything democracy stands for. His words hit like a bombshell. Tice framed the scandal as a moral and constitutional betrayal, vowing to demand an independent inquiry, and if necessary, to call for Starmer's resignation. The impact was immediate. Public confidence in Starmer plummeted. Protests outside Labour Party headquarters grew by the hour. Inside Parliament, the tension was electric. Appearing before MPs, Starmer looked visibly shaken as accusations flew from every corner of the chamber. Reform UK MPs demanded full disclosure of Connelly's involvement in Labour policymaking. Tory MPs called for Starmer's suspension until a proper investigation could be completed. Even Labour MPs once loyal to the leadership began to distance themselves. At one point, a furious confrontation erupted when Richard Tice turned on a senior Labour minister, shouting, "How long have you all known about this? And how much of this rot have you helped bury?" The chamber descended into chaos, forcing the speaker to intervene. Outside Westminster, journalists dug deeper into Connelly's ties. What they uncovered sent yet another shockwave through the country. Links to private consulting firms, undisclosed donors, and anonymous financial networks. And this was only the beginning. Secretive dinners with international power brokers who had no business meddling in UK politics. That's the latest bombshell to rock Westminster. A chilling picture is emerging, a hidden network of influence operating just beneath Labour's carefully polished public image. Former Labour aides are now breaking their silence, speaking anonymously to the press. Everyone knew not to say her name in official meetings, one source told The Guardian, but her shadow was everywhere. This wasn't ignorance. It was complicity, a culture of silence, bought with promises, threats, or both. The media has sunk its teeth into the story and it's not letting go. Meanwhile, Reform UK's momentum is surging. Petitions demanding Starmer's resignation have gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures within hours. Richard Tice's approval ratings are climbing fast as he positions himself not just as a critic, but as a champion for truth and accountability. Leaks from inside Labour paint a picture of sheer panic. Internal emails show strategists scrambling to craft a damage control plan, floating ideas of scapegoating staffers, reshuffling key figures, or even forcing Starmer to take a temporary leave of absence to cool the outrage. But it's too late for spin. The public isn't buying excuses, they want answers. Even the Prime Minister, despite being a political rival, is treading carefully. He publicly calls for restraint, but sources confirm he's being privately briefed on the constitutional fallout. If Starmer is proven complicit in a deliberate cover-up, behind closed doors, rumors of a parliamentary vote of no confidence in the opposition leader are gaining traction, something virtually unheard of in modern British politics. The system that once protected powerful figures is cracking, and many are wondering if this is the moment that finally shatters the illusion of business as usual politics. Yet Starmer remains defiant. He dismisses the allegations as a politically motivated smear campaign, branding Reform UK as a fringe movement desperate for attention, but that statement only poured petrol on the fire. Reform UK hit back within the hour, dropping another bombshell, a leaked file allegedly showing Connelly included an encrypted Labour communications discussing public health contracts during the pandemic. The idea that an unelected, little-known figure may have influenced multi-million-pound public contracts shook the nation's faith in its government to the core. Questions spread like wildfire. Was Connelly just the tip of the iceberg? How deep did this influence run? Who else knew? Parliament went into high alert as threats, protests, and demonstrations escalated. Starmer's team went into full crisis mode, cordoning off Labour HQ, limiting press exposure, and desperately trying to wrest back control of the narrative. But it was too late. The public had already smelled blood. This was no longer just a scandal, it had morphed into a national referendum on trust, democracy, and the soul of British leadership. The only thing certain now is uncertainty itself. As night fell over Westminster, one thing was clear: this saga was far from over. Inside Labour headquarters, the tension was unbearable. Senior advisors were dragged into emergency late-night meetings, whispering about damage control and hurried internal audits. But the leaks kept coming. Anonymous insiders fed details to journalists, painting a picture of chaos, desperation, and fear behind closed doors. Richard Tice, sensing his moment, doubled down. Appearing live on national television, he issued a direct challenge. If Labour has nothing to hide, then let's talk openly. Let's bring the evidence into the light. Let the British people decide. Starmer refused. His silence was interpreted not as caution, but as guilt. The media looped Tice's bold statements on repeat, contrasting his calm, decisive demeanor with Starmer's increasingly embattled, withdrawn appearance. Conservative MPs piled on, demanding immediate clarification and threatening to force a parliamentary inquiry. Some even accused Starmer outright of suppressing key facts. The fallout was brutal. Labour's polling numbers nosedived, especially among working-class voters, many of whom felt betrayed by what they now believed to be a cover-up at the highest level. Tice's populist message, that the elite manipulate the system to silence dissent and hide corruption, resonated deeply with a public already disillusioned with establishment politics. Inside Labour's inner circle, panic reached fever pitch. MPs whispered about resignation letters. Questions spread like a virus. Who knew what town when? Did Starmer personally read the Connelly files before they were buried? Was he briefed on their contents? And perhaps most disturbingly, was there a coordinated effort by Labour operatives to keep those documents from ever reaching Parliament? These questions hung in the air, unanswered, as Richard Tice kept fanning the flames. At one rally, he held up a thick folder marked classified Connelly material and declared, "This isn't just about one case. This is a pattern, a network of lies, silence, and manipulation. And if Starmer thinks we're backing down, he's very wrong." As the political storm raged, the public began to mobilize. Hashtags like #Connelly, Truth, and #Starmer Exposed trended across the country. Protests erupted outside Parliament and Labour offices, with demonstrators demanding full transparency. Social media became a war zone, with Reform UK supporters sharing leaked documents, fiery speeches, and passionate calls for justice. The BBC and other major broadcasters, unable to ignore the growing uproar, dedicated primetime segments to heated debates and expert panels. Some analysts even speculated that this could be the beginning of the end for Starmer's leadership. Others warned that if Labour failed to contain the crisis, the next general election could be turned upside down. Labour attempted a counterattack. A statement was released denying any cover-up and branding Tice's accusations as reckless, baseless, and politically motivated. But the response only deepened suspicion. The statement ignored the Connelly files and whistleblower evidence entirely, something critics called a weak attempt to deflect attention rather than address the scandal head-on. Starmer himself stayed out of sight, reportedly huddling with legal teams and crisis managers. Meanwhile, party loyalists struggled to defend him in television interviews, their carefully scripted talking points a sharp contrast to Tice's bold, unapologetic tone. Then came another blow. A second whistleblower emerged, this time a former aide to a senior Labour MP, in an exclusive interview. They alleged that internal discussions had labeled the Connelly files too explosive to release, and that staff were explicitly ordered to keep quiet about their existence. Their claims were backed by leaked internal emails, some shown live on air, discussing potential political fallout, suppressing media coverage, and even threatening retaliation against anyone who spoke out. With this, the scandal moved beyond speculation into hard evidence. Starmer's position grew increasingly fragile. Within his own party, whispers of doubt turned into open rebellion. A group of backbench MPs publicly demanded an emergency meeting, criticizing the leadership's lack of accountability. One MP bluntly said, "If we are no better than the people we criticize, what do we even stand for?" Reform UK quickly seized on this division, courting disillusioned Labour voters, and even moderate MPs. Tice invited whistleblowers from all parties to come forward, promising legal protection and full exposure of their stories. "This isn't just about Labour," he said. "This is about a system that's failed us all for too long." The crisis snowballed. Each day brought new leaks, fresh protests, and mounting pressure. International media picked up the story, portraying Britain as a country in the middle of a political reckoning. Starmer's once calm, methodical image was now overshadowed by growing perceptions of secrecy, avoidance, and panic. The opposition smelled blood. Reform UK was no longer seen as a fringe insurgent party. It was fast becoming a serious alternative. With the Connelly scandal refusing to die down and Labour's leadership crumbling under scrutiny, the big question shifted. It was no longer just what did Starmer know, but can he survive this storm at all? The British people are waking up. If this story has shocked you, if you believe the truth must be louder than the lies, don't stay silent. Hit the like button to push this video through the algorithm so more people can see what's really happening. Share it with your friends, family, and anyone who still believes the system works for them. And if you want to stay one step ahead of the chaos, subscribe now and turn on the bell icon, because the next twist in the Connelly scandal could break at any moment. Stay alert, stay informed, and above all, stay vocal.